Good morning. I'm happy to be with you, Canby Alliance Church. I used to pastor the Salem Alliance Church, and Tim was in Canby, and we became such great friends all the way back to when he started in youth ministry back in 1983. So I'm in my living room. I'd like to invite you here, and you invite me there, and let's forget about all the technology and share our lives together this morning. When Tim called me on Friday to tell me that his dad was passing away, maybe some of you don't know that he was in Boise a little over a week ago because his brother has cancer too, and he has two family members that he will lose this next year. I can't imagine what it's like to have that layer on top of all the other things going on this Christmas. It seems like since COVID hit last March, it's been a series of layers that keep building in our lives. Can you relate to that? Can you just scroll back over the year and think through the different layers that you've been impacted by? And I'll just sort of walk us through. Some of these are mine, and some of these might be yours, or some of these might be a layer that you have a neighbor or a family member or a friend that's experiencing. But the affliction, I would call it affliction because that's what I want to talk about this morning, the not so perfect Christmas. The affliction has come in layers. First, it was COVID, and we thought, well, this will be a few weeks and maybe a month or two. And some of us even thought we might be back in church last April for Easter. And then it was no way going forward. It was no way in the summer and no way in the fall. And then our children were told they couldn't go back to school. And kids, if you're sitting at home this morning and watching, or maybe you're in church, you've been missing your friends, and that layer of disappointment has been going on for you as you sit in front of a computer and try to learn. It's not right, is it? And then we had to wear masks this last year. And then was the election and all of the confusion that we faced going into it, and the fires and the smoke and the racial unrest in our cities and in downtown Portland, not too far away from us all. Some of us experienced the loss of our career the way we knew it. It's been complicated. Maybe we've lost our job completely, and others of us are just not doing our career the way we used to. Parenting is not the way it used to be. Some of us are trying to figure out how to care for our children. Those of us who are single are saying, this is the worst. I can't connect with people. I'm lonelier than I've ever been. And the layers keep building. I know other people who've had a marital crisis, and their Christmas card came out this year, but the whole family wasn't on it. It was the mom standing with the children, and the dad is no longer in the Christmas picture. And that's not what I've seen over the years. Some of us are struggling with illness besides what might be COVID, and there are certain physical situations this last year that have really complicated your life. Some of you have lost a family member, like Tim, who's going through that right now. I met numerous people this last year who are struggling with the loss of a family member and then having to do a funeral during COVID where they have to sit 6 feet apart and only 25 people can be at the funeral or even less. It seems like the affliction has been layered, going up, up, up this year. Simone Weil was a French woman who was a Catholic, a mystic and a philosopher, and she said this statement, which I memorized years ago, and I'd like to share it with you today. There are only two things that pierce the soul. One is beauty, the other is affliction. When we come to Christmas, we are either experiencing beauty or affliction. It's this time of year, every year, when what Simone Weil has said is felt at the deepest place. There are only two things that pierce the heart. One is beauty, and the other is affliction. I want to talk to you about the first Christmas. When we celebrate it, It all seems so beautiful. Even reading the story that was read this morning from Matthew seems beautiful to us because we love to hear it. But I want to go into this story. It's one that we all know oh so well that we don't even ponder it anymore. We just hear it and pass off. But I'd like to take you back and let's take a look at the not so perfect first Christmas. Let's look at it through Mary's eyes. Would you do that with me this morning? I want to take you through the layers of complication that were occurring. I want to take you through the layers of affliction that Mary felt in her soul. Oh, yes, there was beauty, and Mary had much beauty in her life. And I'm assuming there was beauty on that first night when Christ was born. But there were lots of layers of complication and affliction, like your life, so it was for Mary. Let's unpack the layers, okay? The first Christmas was complicated by the fact that Mary was pregnant and unwed, unmarried, single. Single moms, we know in our world today, and some of you may have been a single mom, and some of you might be a single mom right now. Single moms deserve special care and compassion. But in Mary's day, there was not much of that. There was a lot of shame. It was a shame-based culture. We don't use the term illegitimate child anymore, but that's what people were thinking. This Jesus, this baby that Mary has, is an illegitimate child. There has been an inappropriate sexual relationship with this young woman, and now she has to face the consequences, and there would be much shame. Now, we don't read about how deep that shame was, but in Deuteronomy 22:20 in the Old Testament, it talks about stoning a woman who's been caught in an affair. So Mary, if they go back to the Old Testament, is experiencing some significant, I'm sure they weren't stoning people probably in Mary's day and age for this. Things had changed. They weren't enforcing it maybe the way they used to in the Old Testament, but it was still dramatically shameful. And so Mary is saying, God, you just have allowed a huge predicament to enter my life. I just want you to imagine, those of you who have a daughter or your mom, a sister, a friend, imagine a woman pregnant, unmarried, and trying to explain what's happened. To have a child out of wedlock was a tragic experience for Mary. This issue of receiving the Messiah, of God telling her this is a wonderful thing, seems very flawed. And Mary asks in the text, how can this be? For I am a virgin. This is very complicated. But let's go to the second layer, which is Joseph. The immediate thing after the angel has left Mary in the Matthew account that we read this morning is Joseph enters the scene, and Mary has to try and tell Joseph in Matthew 1:18. Mary has to try and tell Joseph that she's pregnant, but it's not his baby. But it's not another man's baby either. Now, we know that God never appeared to Joseph by an angel right away. How long was Mary waiting before Joseph had the dream with the angel and realized that Mary was pregnant by the Holy Spirit, a supernatural encounter of God in her body giving birth to this little one? She still was a virgin. How long did Mary have to wait? A day? A week? A month? All we know is that Joseph, in the account we read this morning, had decided to divorce her privately. Mary is waiting for the worst thing to happen, the announcement that I have found out my wife that I was going to marry, my engaged, beautiful bride, has been involved with another man, and I will divorce her. And Joseph says, I won't do it publicly. I'll do it privately. And Mary goes home aching and saying, God, Is this the way you do it? Is this the way you bring your Messiah, your Savior, our Christ to the earth? Is this how it happens? This doesn't seem to square with God. Have you ever said that? I have a friend who has been diagnosed with a form of dementia this last fall. This is a person who is a medical professional, incredibly smart, two children, grandchildren, early 60s, preparing to spend the next 15 or 20 or 25 years together with their spouse. And all of a sudden, they're informed, you will lose your ability to understand words, to read words, to communicate words. In other words, in the next 3 years, and within 10 years, you will die. You are heading into a twilight zone. And this person said to me, I've been a really good Christian. Why would God allow this to happen to me? That sounds a lot like Mary. I've been committed to you. God, I've been committed to you all of my life, and I am a virgin. Why would you allow this to happen to me and I would lose Joseph and have to do life this way? How complicated is this? But then the layers keep coming in, and the third layer is we know they call a census. While Mary is pregnant, a census that requires them to go to Bethlehem, to travel about 70 some miles on a donkey while Mary is in her 9th month of pregnancy. And they get in Luke chapter 2, verse 4, as you read it later on today, maybe at home or in your group. In Luke 2, verse 4, they get to Bethlehem and there's no room. We hear that every Christmas. We make it actually sound enjoyable that the baby is born with the animals, and we read stories of the animals to our children, looking at the baby and looking at it through the eyes of the animals. It seems like kind of a mysterious, wonderful thing, but it wasn't. As Mary is going into labor in that stable, she is asking the question, God, is this the way you do it? Not even a room, a small room, an inadequately warm but small room in some hotel or someone's home where I can give birth to the child. Some of you would say exactly what Mary was saying as she went into labor that night. You're saying this to each other as Mary and Joseph were saying it to each other. We'll get through this. Since COVID started, I've heard over and over and over again, we'll get through this. We'll get through this. But there is one more layer that we don't typically include in the Christmas story. And it happens 8 days after the birth, when Mary and Joseph have left Bethlehem, traveled the few miles to Jerusalem, and gone to the temple. They've gone to the temple for the circumcision ceremony, which is the dedication ceremony of every Jewish boy on the 8th day. And so we go to the text today, Luke chapter 2, verses 33 to 35. And in that text, we find the last layer that seems to imply there will be many more layers of affliction that will pierce your soul, Mary. They go to the temple in Luke chapter 2, and they meet a man named Simeon on that 8th day in Luke 2, verses 21. They arrive, and Simeon is there, verse 25. It says, now there was a man in Jerusalem called Simeon, who was righteous and devout. He was the elder statesman of the church, so to speak, the one everybody loves and respects, who handles the child dedications. He must have been serving and working in the temple all of his life. He was waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him. And then it says that Simeon took Jesus in his arms to perform the dedication. And as he took him in his arms, he praised God And remember what Simone Weil says? The heart is caught by two things beauty, it's pierced with two things beauty and affliction. And the beauty comes first. Simeon in verse 28 says, Simeon took in his arms and praised God, saying, Sovereign Lord, you have promised. You now dismiss your servant in peace, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all people, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for the glory to your people Israel. And right now, Mary is saying when she hears those words, all right, we just got through it. This is the announcement. This is the prophecy I've been waiting to hear. Joseph and I are married. The baby is safe in our arms. He's being dedicated in the temple, and he will be a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for glory to the people of Israel. Finally, the layers have lifted and we are done. And we're all waiting for that, aren't we, in our lives? And verse 33 goes on to say, oh no, there will be beauty, but there will be more affliction. Verse 33 says, the child's father and mother marveled at what was said about him. And then Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, his mother, this child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too. There are two things that pierce the human soul: beauty and affliction. And Mary, a sword will pierce your own soul too. We know the rest of the story. We know that the sword pierced Mary's soul many times. When Jesus was a little boy and they couldn't find him because he stayed in Jerusalem to be about his father's bidding. Later in life, when his brothers and sisters couldn't understand what he was doing and they all went to the house because they thought maybe he was losing his mind as he was saying and doing the things he was doing. And they say, Jesus, we're out here, and a message gets sent in, and Jesus says to his mother and brothers who are outside through the people inside, who are my mother and brothers? You are. And Jesus clearly distinguishes himself as someone who is not just serving his family, but all people. The sword continues as Mary watches Jesus rise and fall in his ministry, be blessed and then be rejected by people in Jerusalem and throughout all Galilee. And then we come to the last chapters and we read the story of the crucifixion and Mary standing at the cross as the sword pierces her soul. This prophecy from Simeon made a statement that there will be beauty, but there will be so much affliction. So ends the first Christmas. And now we come to our Christmas, our COVID Christmas. And some of us are saying here, or we have friends across the country and around the world who are saying, my soul is pierced with affliction. There are too many layers. Children are struggling. Teenagers are struggling. Educational systems have been put upside down. Graduations, starting first year of college, or ending high school and then starting college in the same year and saying, what? My last year of high school and my first year of college will be online away from my friends? People dying, people struggling with all kinds of sickness and sorrow and disease and financial setback and the disordered routines of our lives. And some of us have been saying, God, what are you up to? Why is this allowed in my life? A lot of us are thinking, this is a not so perfect Christmas, not unlike Mary's first Christmas, right? In fact, not nearly as serious as the sword that pierced Mary's heart for the next 33 years. A lot of us have been separated from loved ones this Christmas. Loneliness rules the earth. Family members are not present with us as we gather around this Christmas tree behind us. Biopsies have resulted positive and cancer. Some of us know that we have a history of an unfaithful spouse who ripped our life apart. We have memories of abuse, some of us that go back to our childhood days and beyond. Some of you awaken to another morning of arthritic pain as you make your way to begin a day of pain and suffering. Some of you have a rebellious child who won't be with you this Christmas and you wonder where they are. Others of you are struggling with old age that has brought all kinds of complications. And for some of you, unemployment is looming, and it is the not so perfect Christmas. There are other layers. When you share with family or friends or in a group this morning, please know that I know you will be sharing other layers this Christmas of things that have happened to you as you recall the last 8 or 9 months of our lives. And so we're saying what Mary said, if God is in my life, why is it going this way? Why is this happening? I wonder if Mary started with the misconception that it should be perfect, that there won't be any affliction, that it'll just be fine. The Messiah will be born to me, and it'll be a dream, was her hope, to be that woman, if she could be that woman. But when it actually happened, the dream turned into a very difficult dream. I won't call it a nightmare, for there is too much beauty in the story of Christ's birth, life, and death. But it is a story of a very difficult dream and much affliction. George MacDonald impacted C.S. Lewis in England and was one of the key players in C.S. Lewis's life and spiritual journey. And George MacDonald said this, and I want you to ponder this morning. Everything difficult indicates something more than your theory of life embraces. Everything difficult, everything that you can't understand, every affliction, everything difficult that seems inexplainable indicates something more than your theory of life embraces. Over and over again in my life, things have happened. I've had some serious affliction too. And during those seasons of affliction, what was happening did not fit my theory of life. And I had to adjust my thinking about God and myself and life and meaning and purpose and destiny. I had to rethink my theory of life. I had to go back to the scriptures and rethink what's happening that still fits in the way God intends, just as Mary had to do on that first Christmas. You know, we expect God to come in through the front door. Quite often, he comes in through the garage. That was the first Christmas, through the stable. Mary's first response became her lifelong response. I am the Lord's servant, Mary said. Be it done to me. That's the beautiful statement that Mary makes in Luke 1, verse 38. I am the Lord's servant. I don't know what's going on. This doesn't fit my theory of life, but may it be done to me as you have said. And over and over and over again, layer after layer, affliction after affliction, Mary had to keep coming to the place where she said, may it be done to me as you have said. Simone Weil, there are only two things that pierce the human heart. One is beauty, and the other is affliction. What is piercing your heart this Christmas? What is piercing your heart this Christmas? Is it beauty, love, worship, celebration, or is it affliction? Or maybe both. Viktor Frankl was a Viennese psychiatrist who almost died in a World War II concentration camp, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. It's such an important book that many of you have probably read it or heard of it. But I know there's one statement in Viktor Frankl's book, who suffered so deeply in World War II in that concentration camp. There's one statement in that book that is shaping me. He said, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds meaning. Suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds meaning. Do you know what Mary did? Mary, through each layer of Jesus' life and the affliction that it brought to Mary, his mother, Mary over and over again discovered that suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds meaning. I am your servant, Lord. Be it done unto me as you have said. The surrender to the greater meaning of God's creative wonder and the destiny that surrounds our lives. Her suffering had to be grounded in meaning for her to go forward. Your suffering has to be grounded in the meaning, in the truth of Christ this Christmas. I just want to end with Paul, who, after Jesus, suffered for being a Christ follower to the point where he was shipwrecked and whipped and was stoned with rocks and on and on. And Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4:17, he says this about the affliction that's piercing his soul and our souls today. Our light and momentary afflictions are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. I'm not prepared to call my afflictions light and momentary sometimes. But Paul, who suffered much more than any of us, is willing to say, folks, this is not the end. We will not only get through this. When we get through these afflictions, they will achieve for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Please remember that on this not so perfect Christmas, will you? Let's pray. Our God, we are struck by beauty. Our soul is shot through with the beauty and wonder of Christmas, and our soul is struck and weighed down by affliction today. Children are disappointed. Teenagers are disappointed. Single and married people are disappointed. Elderly people are disappointed. We are waiting for affliction to shift. But then there comes another layer. We think of the layer that has entered Tim's life, our pastor. Another layer, more than one. Oh God, have mercy and provide care for Tim and Heather today. And Father, as we sit here in church together back home, we are in desperate need of you to care for us in the affliction we face and to help us become aware once again of the beauty that also pierces our souls. Through Christ our Lord, at Christmas we pray. Amen. Thank you.